We continue with the Tafsir of the Qur'an, surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 143 this week. Inshallah, we continue on from the 2 weeks ago because we had a break last week. So the last session we had, the previous verses, very briefly talked about the change of the Qibla to the Kaaba in Mecca from Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. And we said that this was a preparation and indication for the changes of responsibility to carry out the duty of revelation for this ummah, for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That a new ummah has come, a new and final messenger has come with the final book, and the responsibility of guidance, of revelation, of deen has now transferred to this new ummah. And we also said that the duty of the ummah wasn't just to the Arabian Peninsula. It was now a global responsibility to convey this message, to convey the ilm and the wahi of the Qur'an to the global ummah, to the global audience, not just to the Arabian Peninsula. So in this verse 143, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Thus we have made you a wasat, ummatan wasata. A wasat nation," let's keep it as that for now, "that you will be witnesses over mankind, and the messenger will be a witness over you. And we made the Qibla which you used to face only to test those who followed the messenger from those who would turn on their heels. Indeed, it was heavy, difficult, except for those whom Allah guided, and Allah would never make your faith or prayers to be lost. Truly Allah is full of kindness, the most merciful towards mankind." So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins with وَكَذَلِكَ, thus. In English you say, "Thus we have made," or something like that. And this could refer to two meanings. وَكَذَلِكَ could refer to something before this verse, or it could refer to something in the verse itself. So it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already said something, and then He's saying, "Thus, therefore, we have made you a middle nation," or the wasat nation. So if it refers to something before that, the Mufassirun, they said it refers to where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He guides whom He wants. قُلِ اللَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ, say, for Allah is the Mashriq and the Maghrib, the East and the West. يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ, He guides whom He wants to the straight path. Verse 142, the verse before this. Because guidance is in His hand, He guides whom He wills to the straight path. Therefore He has chosen you, thus He has chosen you, or made you the balanced or the just nation, the wasat nation. So it follows from that. Or they said it could be a meaning that is in the verse itself. So the verse itself is وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, that thus we have made you a ummah wasata, a wasat nation, so that you may be witnesses over mankind. Meaning so that you can be witnesses over mankind, we have made you a balanced or just nation. So this is the two meanings that the Mufassirun mention. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Thus we have made you an ummah, and the word used to describe this ummah is what? Wasata. What does this mean, wasat? What does it mean? Wasat in the Arabic language is when something is in the middle and is surrounded by other things. So imagine a large circle, and right in the middle there's a dot. So that's wasat, it's in the middle. But it's not just middle between two things. It more precisely means it's in the middle, but surrounded by other things, many other things, like in a circle. So this is why they say, you get the meaning of wasata is in the middle, yes, but it has more meaning than that. It's not just in the middle, like three objects and one is in the middle, no. It has more meaning than that. So from there they also said it has a meaning of izzah, and honor. It also has a meaning of protection. Is protected, something high, something protected, something that is surrounded and defended. So that's why when you say like the fortress that's in the middle of a city, most people, when they plan the city in those days, they would make the fortress or the king's palace right in the middle of the city. Why? Because it's surrounded and protected. It's in a protected position. It also has the indication, the word has an indication that it means the best or the most precious. It's for khair or khiyar, and it's also for something nafis, precious, rare, valuable. Why? Where do they get this meaning from? Because they say on a necklace, the middle pearl or the middle ornament, the middle piece, is usually the largest piece, is usually the most expensive piece, is usually the most attractive thing in the necklace. It's the best part of the necklace. That piece is exactly in the middle. If you string the necklace like that, it's in the middle. So they say wasat also means best or most precious or most valuable. Wasat also, when used to describe between two negative qualities, it means one which is balanced. One which is balanced. For example, two negative qualities. So courage, for example, courage is between two negative qualities. It's the balance, it's in the middle, it's the perfect place to be between two negative qualities. What are they? One is to be a coward, cowardice, and the other one is to be reckless. So you have two extremes. One, you have no courage. You're a coward, you're scared. You have no courage to do anything, to stand up to the truth, for the truth. On the other hand, you're too courageous. You're too reckless. You're too brave. You go into somewhere where something will destroy you. So that's called recklessness. That's not called courage. In the middle between these two negative qualities is courage. That description, which is in the middle of two negative qualities, is also wasat. They say this is, the balance that they're talking about. You will also see that it means adl as well. It means just. Something which is, what's the symbol for justice? The two scales. Why? Because before you make a judgment, before you go to court, the scales of justice is in balance. It's neither favoring towards this side or favoring towards the other side. It's in perfect balance. It's just means it's something in the middle, it's balanced as well. Justly balanced, they say. So adl, the meaning of adl is also in wasat. So you can see now the description of this ummah, many of these qualities. It's the best ummah. It's the balanced ummah. It's the just ummah. All of these qualities, all of these meanings come from the word wasat. This ayah is also, or this part of the ayah is also praising the Muslims about the virtues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this ummah over others. Because He has made them upright and just, udul, as a collective. Why is this important? Why is this quality important and how is it related? It's important because this message, now that the responsibility has gone to who? To carry this message, to carry the deen, to carry the wahi, the Qur'an, to carry the message of Tawheed. It's gone to who? The Muslims, the Muslim Ummah. Why does this Ummah have to be just? Adl. Why does it have to be balanced? Why does it have to be wasat? Why does it have to be the best? The reason why it has to be with those descriptions is because when you receive news, just like hadith, will you take news from just anybody? When you receive information or news, what is hadith? Hadith is information. Will you take hadith, will the scholars take hadith just from anybody. No. What do they look for in the narrator? What do they look for? The narrator has to be truthful, right? Two main qualities. There's 5 conditions for a hadith to be sahih. 5 main conditions. 2 of those conditions are related to the person, to the narrator, directly. Quality or characteristic of the one who narrates. Those 2 qualities are al-adala and dabt. So the narrator who's informing us, the Prophet ﷺ said this, or he heard his teacher, who heard it from his teacher, who heard it from the Prophet. The person who's bringing the information is khabar, is news. That person needs to be, first of all, has to be upright and trustworthy, truthful. This is what the scholars of hadith look for in the person. Secondly, the person has to have good memory or has to be precise in what he says, in what he narrates. You can be the most truthful person, most honest person, but you've got such a bad memory. That's no good for us, because your truthfulness, your honesty is not going to benefit me when it comes to you conveying some information or news, because you're going to make mistakes. You're going to give me the wrong information. And you could have the sharpest memory on earth. You could remember, you could have what they call it, photographic memory. But you could be a liar. So your memory is no good to me because you're going to lie and change things. So the hadith scholars look for these 2 qualities in the narrator. To cut it short, the dabt, the precision, accuracy, or strength of memory, and adala, uprightness, just, trustworthy, truthfulness. This person is someone who doesn't lie, he's trustworthy, he doesn't engage in major sins, etc., etc. This is the quality that's required when you receive information, news, or even when you're a witness, but especially in hadith science. Now, this ummah has the responsibility of what? To carry the message of the Qur'an, to carry the message of this deen, to convey, protect, and teach the rest of mankind this deen, its sharia, the Qur'an, its meaning, hadith, the sunnah, the fiqh, the law. All of this ummah has the responsibility. So as a collective, this ummah must have these qualities. It must be trustworthy. It must be just. It must be truthful. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing this ummah, that they are ummatan wasata. It's a quality, it's a set of qualities that's required for them to take on the responsibility of conveying the deen, And we see this in practical action throughout history. We don't think about this often. How did we receive this Qur'an today in printed copy? How did we receive Sahih al-Bukhari or Muslim or Tirmidhi or Abu Dawud or all the other hadith collections? How did we receive those? They didn't have printing press and big books written right in the time of the Sahaba. Most of it is through memory and through writing, yes. But in each science, whether it's hadith or Qur'an, it was carried, preserved, and taught by upright, trustworthy people. People who had adala. And the amazing thing is, and you'll see this in every science, you go and study the hadith, you go and see the narrators that Imam Bukhari uses, Imam Muslim uses, or any of the others who use, when they say these narrators are trustworthy, or when they're using narrators for Sahih hadith, the first quality they must meet is of adala. They have to be trustworthy, truthful. And these narrators were truthful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people who would carry the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with this quality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people with the quality of trustworthiness to carry the Qur'an from generation to generation, to teach the Qur'an as they were taught. This is how this deen is preserved. So you will see this in practical action. The amazing miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, of the Qur'an, is that it produced a generation. Now, of course, it's by the choice and by the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He chose the best of mankind as the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, And then he chose the best of people to be his Sahaba, to be his companions. And the Sahaba, the companions, are the only generation that have been given the stamp of approval when it comes to adala, uprightness, truthfulness. In hadith science, when you get, say, 4 names, somebody's teacher, from his teacher, from his teacher, who connects to a Sahaba, and then to the Prophet ﷺ. The first 3 links in that chain, you have to check adala. You have to check, were they upright, were they truthful, as well as the other condition. When it comes to the Sahaba, you don't have to check whether they were truthful or upright. This is given, it's a default position of the Sahaba. As soon as you know that this person is a Sahaba, you don't have to check, was he upright, was he truthful. Prophet ﷺ and this Qur'an produced a generation that were upright and truthful. They had the stamp of adala, they were all udul. They were all udul. Every single person after the Sahaba, they can be questioned. Was he upright or not? Does he meet the conditions for adala? Is he someone described with this condition of adl in the narrations, in the science of narrations? Isnad, you can question and you have to question. And you have to find out whether or not they were truthful. When it comes to Sahaba, you don't. Everybody accepts, they are automatically given the seal of approval of truthfulness. Doesn't mean they don't make mistake or they don't have bad memory. That's to do with dabt. That bit you can check. Some Sahaba may have heard something and then later forgot a little bit of it, or they made a mistake in saying something or observing. That's different. That they will check. But when it comes to the quality of adala, of uprightness, truthfulness, of conveying something faithfully, this you don't have to check with the Sahaba. So, hence, this ayah, the scholars also use for the proof of the infallibility of the ummah as a collective. The infallibility of the ummah as a collective, meaning what the ummah agrees upon, decides upon, as an ijma'. If the ummah agrees on something as an ijma', collective agreement, then they will not make a mistake in that. They will not err or make an error in that judgment. As you know, some of the wordings of the hadith, the famous hadith, that my ummah will not agree upon error, on dalala. Why? Because of this quality, that this ummah has been described as ummatan wasata, the ummah that is upright and truthful. It's got this seal of approval. But as a collective, individuals in the ummah, yes, someone can be lying, someone can be untruthful, someone could be deceiver, etc., etc. But we're talking about as a collective. So what we're saying is there will never be a time in this ummah where all the scholars and all the people of knowledge will agree on something that is wrong. That will never come. There will always be a group within the ummah who will say and speak the truth. This ummah will never agree on an error, on something that is wrong. So in that way, the deen and the teachings is preserved. Why is this important? It's important because, as I said, that the ummah has been given this responsibility to convey this deen. And if they fall as a collective, if they're not protected, then the teachings of this deen can be corrupted, can be changed. It can be messed around with. There's no guarantee. So the ummah as a collective, as a whole body, has been given this quality so that the deen is protected, the message in its authenticity, and it's how it's meant to be presented, how it's meant to be taught, is protected. So there's no misguidance in this deen. There are people who are in every generation, who are upright, who understand this deen and who can teach this deen. So this is why this quality is important. Further, the other aspect of wasata is balance. So we've had the meaning of the best nation, and this is also backed up by the Qur'an. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You are the best nation raised up for mankind. This is backed up. The best nation. Wasata, one of the meanings is the best. We've had wasata also means what? Just. Adl. It means just and adl. Upright nation. A just nation. But it also means balanced. Balanced. Fakhruddin al-Razi, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi said, this ayah also means that this ummah or they are balanced in deen between two things, between negligence and excess, between falling short and going to extremes, right? So he said, for example, this ummah didn't go to extremes with their messenger or with the messengers. Like other nations, they made a messenger into God. That's going extreme. This ghulu, this is extreme love or extreme praise for a prophet, whereby you make him into a god. Other nations went the other way. They fell short. They made mockery of the prophets, or they denied the prophets, or they just, made fun or took them very lightly. They ascribed actions to prophets which are not becoming of prophets. They said, they did things of very bad character, which we don't believe that prophets do. So Fakhruddin Razi is saying this ummah is balanced in that way. Neither it goes to an extreme, neither it falls short. So that's the moderation, is the balanced way, the wasat here. So why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He made you a just, balanced nation or the best nation. Then He continues, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. Allah Himself is saying the main reason why. So that you may become, or so that you may be witnesses over mankind. Witnesses over mankind. So this is, and you notice here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the explanation, He's giving us the reason. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't do things just out of vain, without any purpose. He's telling you He made you the best nation, the middle nation, a just nation. Why? There's a purpose behind it, there's a reason behind it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions, because of His perfect wisdom and because of His perfect knowledge, His actions are full of wisdom and purpose. They are done in truth. They are done with haqq. They are done with wisdom, hikmah. They are done with a purpose. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains that purpose here. He says, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. So that you may be witnesses over mankind. So we know the scholars explain this in a couple of ways. The first way, how is this ummah witness over mankind? The first way is, as in Sahih Bukhari, from Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu an, قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يدعى نوح عليه السلام يوم القيامة فيقول لبيك وسعديك يا ربي فيقول هل بلغت فيقول نعم فيقال لأمته هل بلغكم فيقولون ما أتانا من نذير فيقول من يشهد لك فيقول محمد وأمته فيشهدون أنه قد بلغ ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا فذلك قوله عز وجل وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. In Sahih al-Bukhari, from the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, that radiyallahu anhu, he said, the Prophet ﷺ said that Nuh alayhi salam will be called on the day of judgment, and it will, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nuh alayhi salam will respond, he will say, labbaik wa sa'adaik, I'm here at your service. Ya Rabb, O my Lord. Fayaqul, then Allah will say to him, did you convey the message? Hal ballaghta? Did you convey the message? I sent you as a prophet, as a messenger, did you convey it? He will say, na'am. He will say, yes. Then it will be asked of his ummah. His ummah will be there in front of him. And they will be asked, did Nuh alayhi salam convey the message to you all? And they will say, no warner came to us. No warner came to us. I mean, we didn't hear any prophets. We didn't hear any warnings. We didn't get any messengers, they will say. And then it will be said to Nuh alayhi salam, who will bear witness for you? And then he will say, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his ummah. Nuh alayhi salam will say, Muhammad and his ummah will bear witness that I conveyed the message. فَيَشْهَدُونَ أَنَّهُ قَدْ بَلَّغَ. So the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they will bear witness that indeed Nuh alayhi salam conveyed the message. Then he carries on and says, this is the ayah, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا كُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. He relates it to this ayah, meaning this ayah is, you will be witnesses over mankind, يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, on the day of judgment. How? Like this. You will bear witness that each messenger came and conveyed the message. Because their peoples will deny it. They will say, we didn't receive the message. And another meaning, and also in another narration of the same hadith, in the meaning, in another narration, not in Bukhari, they said that when they will be asked that Muhammad and his ummah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, will bear witness for Nuh alayhi salam, they will say, how can they bear witness? They weren't there. They came many centuries afterwards. How can they bear witness? They weren't there. And it will be said that they will respond, the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they will say that we were sent a prophet, alayhi salam. We were sent a book, the Qur'an. And we took an oath, we took a ahad, we took a promise that we will convey the message. And in this book, the book informed us that Nuh alayhi salam was sent as a messenger and he conveyed the message to his people. So this is how the ummah will respond. So therefore, this is the meaning, one of the meanings of shuhada ala nas, witness over mankind. Another meaning is that this ummah will witness over people after they die. How? In Sahih Muslim, عن أنس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال حين مرت به جنازة فأثني عليها خير فقال وجبت ثم مر عليه بأخرى فأثني عليها شر فقال وجبت فقال عمر فدا لك أبي وأمي مر بجنازة فأثني عليها خير فقلت وجبت ومر بجنازة فأثني عليها شر فقلت وجبت فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أثنيتم عليه خيرا وجبت له الجنة ومن أثنيتم عليه شرا وجبت له النار أنتم شهداء الله في الأرض أنتم شهداء الله في الأرض أنتم شهداء الله في الأرض. So this is in Muslim, and the same meaning is in Bukhari. And then in some other narrations, after the end of the hadith, this ayah was recited. لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. So here it means that when somebody dies, when somebody passes away, if the Muslim community bears witness that this person was good, they praise him, they say he was good, they bear witness this was an upright person, he was a practicing good, decent, honest Muslim. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. Because the Sahaba, they bore witness, they said, and they praised this janazah, the person who was being carried. Then the Prophet ﷺ said 3 times, wajabat. What? Jannah. Because of the shahada of the Sahaba. And the opposite. Because the people said this person was a bad person. They gave witness that he was evil. then Prophet ﷺ said, wajabat, wajabat, wajabat. It's become obligatory, it's become obligatory, it's become obligatory. What? Hellfire. So this is another meaning of shuhada ala nas. That you as an ummah, you bear witness. What you say, obviously, if someone's really bad, in the sight of Allah, because we don't know appearances, but in the sight of Allah, they haven't prayed, they didn't pray, they weren't faithful to the deen, they weren't obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then just for the sake of it, after janazah, a few people say he was good, is that going to work? No, because when you bear witness, you have to speak the truth. It has to be accurate, right? But this is why it's good to have big janazah, that people come and bear witness. And this is why, obviously not because people will bear witness for us, but how you act in your life, this is how you will be remembered. How you act with people, how you display yourself, how you carry yourself with regards to this deen, people are witnessing. And they will witness when you die. You will see this. They will either praise you or they will criticize you. You will see this. And this is dangerous because the Prophet ﷺ said that you are the shuhada, you are the witnesses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth. So what's the connection here? The connection is that the best and upright, just, means as a whole ummah, we will not be misguided. As a community, we will not be misguided. This deen will stay protected so that we can convey it. And in summary, in the hadith, we see two types of witnesses. One is, we as an ummah will witness on the day of judgment. We will witness on behalf of other messengers. And two, we will witness on this earth. We will witness the good believers. We will witness those who disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have a role in this dunya as well as in the day of judgment. And the Mufassirun, they said the perfection of being witnesses over mankind in the dunya is our obligation to invite all nations to Islam, to at least convey Islam to the people, da'wah. This is part of being witnesses over mankind in the dunya. There's two types of witnesses. One is in the dunya, one is on Yawm al-Qiyamah. The hadith talks about Yawm al-Qiyamah, and the other hadith talks about this life here. But also the Mufassirun said that this also means witness over mankind in this dunya. How? Because the Prophet ﷺ is no longer here to convey the message. Who carries that responsibility on? It's this ummah. So it is obligatory for us to convey the message of Islam in its proper way, how it was meant to be, in faithfully, objectively, accurately, in a balanced way to the other nations, to the other people. This is part of being witnesses over mankind. So that we take or we continue the role of the Prophet ﷺ, which was to convey this message to the whole of humanity. So this is also our role, our duty, to be witnesses over mankind. So just quickly to summarize here, just on this small part we mentioned about being witnesses and about being people who convey this deen to the rest of mankind, three important points related to this duty of da'wah. Number one, that it must be done. There is an obligation that we have to carry this responsibility. It has to be done. It's not something that, let's leave it to one or two specialists. They will convey the message. No, the Prophet ﷺ also said, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. Convey from me, even if it's one ayah. You convey what you know. You convey what you know. So the first thing is a duty. At the very least, it's a fard kifaya, as the Mufassirun have said, due to other Quranic verses. But at the very least, it's a fard kifaya. It's a communal obligation. At the very least, there must be groups of people who convey the message, who convey Islam, who present Islam properly, who study the deen. So the second thing, if you want to convey, and it has to be done, it must be presented properly. This is the whole reason why this ummah has been described as ummatan wasata. That you're going to preserve the deen as it came, you're going to understand it, learn it, and then convey it, teach it, pass it on. That takes what? You have to learn. It requires deep knowledge. And it requires the person who is doing this conveying or invitation, they themselves have to implement this deen and practice it. They have to be ambassadors, representatives, role models of this deen too. They can't just be talking and not implementing and not practicing the deen themselves. So that's number 2. Number 3, it must be done in a balanced manner. What does this mean? If this ummah is adl, is this ummah, there's a sense of balance and just uprightness there, but also balance. This is the middle nation between extreme and between being too lax. It must be done in a balanced way. How do we get a balanced way? Number 1, a deep understanding of this deen. There has to be knowledge. It takes time. We have to study this deen. It's not something just, you can learn overnight. It's not something just a few days. We have to make effort. We have to study the Qur'an. We have to study the Sunnah. We have to study the fiqh. We have to understand this deen properly. That's number 1. Number 2 is understanding the priorities of this deen. Not everything in the deen is as important as each other. There are priorities. There are levels. There are parts of the deen which is critical, which is essential to the deen. There are parts of the deen which are on the outskirts, which are on the periphery, which are the smaller furu', the branches of the deen. Of course, any part of the deen is important, but there are differences, right? Iman, the usul of the deen are things like iman, faith, having faith, iman, tawheed. These are the foundations of the deen. Having taqwa, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Getting rid of, the major diseases of the heart, like kibr, pride and arrogance and jealousy. All of these things, these are from the usul of the deen. Then within the Islamic law, you have the things which are also usul. From the fiqh, the prayer, that's from the usul of the deen. The salah, the fasting, the hajj. These are major pillars of the deen. But then there's other things within fiqh which are not as major pillars. We need to understand the differences. Somebody doesn't do something of a branch of fiqh where there's ikhtilaf, where there's difference. You don't treat that, you don't approach that as somebody who's missing salah, somebody who's missing Ramadan fasting. You don't approach both with the same approach. There is a difference. You have to understand what is more important than the other. Then not only understand that, you have to understand the time and place we live in. In this time and in this place, which parts of the deen, after understanding the priorities, is how to apply this deen. There's many aspects of the deen that you have to know when to apply, how to apply in this context, with who, which type of people, in which type of society. There are many parts of the deen that were revealed in Medina. When the Muslims became strong, they had state power, they had political power, they had control over the land, they were ruling. There's many, many laws there. You can't simply just cut and paste those laws and now bring them to Britain and say, this is also a priority. No, that's different. There's a different context. Right? You have to understand the state of our people. What is the state of Muslims? Like one of my teachers said, 90% of, if the Khilafah came back, 80% of Muslims will be in prison. Yeah, why? Because at least the least punishment for not praying, the least, Abu Hanifa's madhab, he's the most lenient on this. He said they will be in prison. If somebody misses one salah, intentionally, without any excuse, he misses the prayer. What is it? He will be imprisoned. So if there was Islamic rule and authority, our community today, the state we're in, most people, even if it's not 80%, 60%, 70% would be in prison. So there's many, many other things, bigger things, smaller things. So, we have to understand the situation of the ummah, situation of the community, before we start giving verdicts and fatwas and judgments and criticize. And, we have to understand both the deen, which parts are usul, which parts are fundamental pillars, which parts are branches, which parts there's ikhtilaf, difference of opinion, which parts there's room for maneuver. And we have to understand which parts to apply to this community. Can we apply everything to this community here where we are in this society? And don't worry if you don't get to talk about the whole of Islam. One of the things I hear is, yes, but brothers, if we don't talk about everything, people are going to forget. People are going to forget this is part of Islam. You're going to become assimilated. You're going to present a partial Islam. Next generation, they're going to forget this is part of Islam. No, they're not going to forget, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised to preserve this deen. And trust me, all of Islam is all in the books. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of books throughout the libraries. There's thousands and thousands of teachers. This is preserved. People will not forget. Yes, in practice, people have already forgotten. That's different. But in theory, in terms of this Islam as a deen, it's protected, it's preserved. It will be preserved. And this is the characteristic. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Why have you got this characteristic of being truthful, of just, of being balanced? Why? Because you're going to protect the deen. It doesn't mean you have to speak and promote every single aspect of the whole deen where we are today, here and now. There is a time and place for things. There is a context for things. There are some things which change with place and time. So we have to understand all of this. So these are the important points related to da'wah, related to the responsibility of this ummah. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And so the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he can be a shaheed over you. He will be a witness over you. And see the grades here, subhanallah. Because when you witness, when you bear witness or give testimony about somebody, when you apply for a job, you give a reference, they ask you for 2 references. Do you give the reference for someone who's below you or someone who's higher? You give the higher one. You give your managing director, your boss, your supervisor, your manager, or someone who's higher in status or whatever, in job ranking. Look at how the witness levels are here. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this ummah is a witness over other nations. Indicating, meaning this ummah is better than the other nations. That's why they can be witness, reference for the other nations. Then this ummah cannot be witness over the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ is better than the rest of the ummah. So the Prophet ﷺ is a witness for us over this ummah, because he is better. And then, who is witness for the Prophet ﷺ? Because all the other messengers, they have the ummah of Muhammad ﷺ as witness. Who's the witness for Prophet ﷺ? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Prophet ﷺ said, ألا هل بلغت فيقولون نعم فيقول اللهم اشهد. The Prophet ﷺ said, have I conveyed the message? People said, yes, you have. But he didn't take that as shahada. He said, Allahumma ashhad. Oh Allah, bear witness. So the witnessing goes from the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ to the Prophet ﷺ to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the levels of witnessing. So the Prophet ﷺ, he will be a witness over us. What does this mean? It means definitely for the ummah that was alive during his lifetime, he will definitely be a witness. He will be a witness that he conveyed the message when he was alive, without a doubt. They also said that he will be a witness in terms of his sharia. Even though he's not alive, his sharia that is left behind, the Qur'an, the Sunnah, will be a witness whether or not we followed his sharia. It will bear witness. The Prophet ﷺ said, this Qur'an, whoever studies it and reads it, it will bear witness either for you or against you. So the Prophet ﷺ is a witness in that sense, whether we've seen him or not, whether he was alive or not in our time. Either he is witness over the people that he saw during his lifetime, or his teachings are witness over us after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how is this related to us today? Where are we related to this role and responsibility? We have, just half of this verse, I think we'll finish here today, just half of this verse. We'll continue the remainder of the verse next week. But in terms of practically, for us, what does this mean? What does this mean being witnesses over mankind? What does this mean being ummah of wasat? Well, first of all, it gives us the sense of responsibility of learning this deen properly. If we're to be an ummah that protects this deen, not protects it, Allah protects it, but carries this deen and carries it faithfully, authentically, and teaches it and conveys it to others, then the first step we have to do is to learn this deen properly. The second thing we have to do is take it upon us to explain and convey this deen in an authentic manner that is truthful and faithful to the deen. And as I mentioned before, to do that we have to do it in a balanced way. We have to understand the deen deeply. We have to understand what's priority. We have to understand what's usul, the fundamentals of this deen, compared to what's furu', the branches of the deen. Whether it's in aqeedah or in amal, in practice or fiqh. We have to understand these things. And number three is that we are a balanced nation. That we do not represent a nation which is either extreme in its practice, in its over-love of whatever it is that makes you go outside of the Sharia, or we are not the other extreme, which neglects the Sharia, neglects the boundaries, neglects the obligations, becomes too lax, everything goes. And these two big diseases are in our communities. These are in our communities. Those who don't pray, for example, the fard prayers, or fast in Ramadan, or don't perform Hajj when they have the money, or don't pay zakah. They are in the extreme of neglecting, omitting. That's an extreme. And there's many people who want to take out parts of Sharia today. Oh, we live in modern times, Sharia is no longer, because they got a very limited understanding of Sharia in the first place. But even Salah and other things, they say, what's wrong? I love Allah in my heart. I make dua, I'm a good person. Why do I have to pray 5 times a day? So this is negligence. This is omission. This is extreme in this sense. An extreme of not practicing. Then you have the other extreme who are so up for it, to establish the deen. The deen must be established. And there's many ways where this manifests. Whether you're talking about, the mayhem we see sometimes throughout the world in terms of trying to, for the sake of this deen. For example, it's a dangerous topic to talk about, but I'll mention it. I won't mention the country, but I think you all know. In a certain country, the reaction we saw when somebody was acquitted of blasphemy, a woman was acquitted of blasphemy. It's a long, complicated case. Let's not go into it. But I'm saying the reactions we saw, as somebody said, in this country there are bigger injustices happening. In this country there are much bigger dhulm happening against the deen, against the Muslims, etc. And it's not just that country, it's in most Muslim countries. Not even picking on that country. But the reaction from the Muslims is that ghulu, that no, whatever happens, by any means necessary, this person must be killed. Because she said so and so. This is the extreme reaction of people. And not just there, you see it in trying to establish, whether it's trying to establish Islamic State by force, by killing people. This is the extreme. I don't use the word extremist as in, government policy or anything like that, or their definition. That's different. I'm just talking about what the Mufassirun have said about wasat, about balance, and the two extremes from the Qur'an purely, from the Sunnah. That there is that extreme there. People who become too extreme in their way, they take the shortcut because they don't understand the context. They don't have a deep understanding of the deen. They don't know the furu'. the branches from the usul, from the branches from the foundations. They don't know the context, they don't know what's allowed when, and they want to take shortcuts. And they want to implement something or establish something overnight. That's the other extreme. And it's not just those, it could be in very small things, whether it's clothing, whether it's criticizing others, whether it's condemning others, whether it's to do with the saved group. Everyone in my group is saved, everybody else is going to hellfire. That's another type of extremism. So this exists in our ummah, this exists in our communities, and we have to be above that. We have to recognize that. We have to be balanced. We have to be people of both deep understanding of the deen and deep understanding of the context we live in, and that's the definition of hikmah, the application of the deen to the situation. The hikmah in the Qur'an, yes, it's also defined as the sunnah, but what is the sunnah except application of the deen in practical terms by the Prophet ﷺ. So this is what we have to learn, a deep understanding of the deen, but also a deep understanding of the context of the situation and know how to apply the deen to our situation. So we will stop here inshallah today, and we'll carry on next week.